I'd like to ask you a personal question. Do you feel in control of your life? Can you choose how you spend your time based on your priorities and values? If you have an objective, do you feel empowered to strive for it? Do you believe you can achieve it? Do you have the tools and the time to give it your best effort? If you're like most of us, the answer is probably sometimes. Many aspects of our lives are subject to outside forces, and part of our well-being, as we've seen, involves using our resilience to deal with circumstances that we can't control. But I'd like you to think about a moment when you did feel in control, where your goals were clear and self-determined, and you felt empowered to face challenges. Do you have that moment in mind? Now think how that felt. Were you happy? Did you find it easy to achieve flow? Were you productive? I'm guessing the answer to all of these is yes. What you were feeling in the moment was autonomy, and it's one of the more powerful components of well-being that a person can experience. And there's likely an evolutionary reason for this. Long ago, the people who happened to experience positive emotions when they had a sense of control were the ones who looked for ways to control things. And those who took control of their lives increased their likelihood of survival. So their genes, which included a desire for control, were more likely to be passed on to us. So today, we all have a desire for control, and that helps us to take action to solve problems and to avoid unwanted situations, or at least to prepare for them. All of this reduces the likelihood that we experience stress, and lower stress levels are good for our happiness and our health. It turns out that autonomy has less to do with whether we objectively have control of a situation and more to do with whether or not we perceive a level of personal control. This perception can be influenced by two factors. One is locus of control, and the other is self-efficacy. People who have an internal locus of control believe that outcomes are influenced by personal action. People who have an external locus of control believe outside forces like other people or luck determine outcomes. Locus of control is a continuum. We all fall somewhere along the spectrum. Do you believe your success is due to your hard work and persistence? Or do you think you landed that big account because the economy turned around? What about your team? Where do they fall on the continuum? We are all more motivated and empowered to work hard when we have a higher internal locus of control. One study of 200 accounting professionals found that those with an internal locus of control had higher levels of job performance and job satisfaction and lower levels of stress. A meta-analysis that combined multiple studies of thousands of employees concluded that locus of control was one of the best predictors of job satisfaction and job performance. A sense of control is so important for employee well-being and performance that psychologists at the University of South Florida created a scale to measure what they call work locus of control. Now, studies using this scale have shown that the amount of control employees feel they have at work impacts their satisfaction, stress levels, and intentions to quit. The second factor that influences our sense of personal control is self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is your belief in your ability to take action that will result in a desired outcome. Locus of control is a more general belief about whether or not you have control over outcomes, while self-efficacy is more specific. It's your belief that you have the skills or knowledge needed to achieve a particular outcome. It's task-specific. You can have high self-efficacy for winning a tennis match, but low self-efficacy for winning a golf game. At work, you may have high self-efficacy for preparing a financial report, but low self-efficacy for giving a presentation. Self-efficacy influences the goals that employees set and the tasks that they choose to learn. It also affects their level of effort and their persistence. Not surprisingly, people prefer to do things that they feel they're good at, and they work harder for something when they believe they will succeed. A meta-analysis combining 114 different studies, which included over 21,000 people, showed a significant positive relationship between self-efficacy and job performance. And the relationship can be mutually reinforcing because, as we'll see, better performance leads to higher self-efficacy. Given the importance of personal control for employee well-being and performance, leaders should focus on building both their employees' sense of internal locus of control and their self-efficacy. Let's look at some of the things you can do, starting with locus of control. The very best way to give people a sense of control is to actually give them control. Seriously. There's a classic study by psychologists Ellen Langer and Judith Rodin of nursing home patients. They encourage the patients to take small steps to exert more control over their environments. Some examples of the changes patients made were to decide which TV channel they wanted to watch, to choose whether they wanted the air conditioner on or off, and to decide what they wanted to eat for dinner. Some even chose to have the furniture in their room rearranged. And the patients were also given a house plant, and they were told that the care of the plant was their responsibility. 3 weeks after being encouraged to take more control over their lives and being given the responsibility of caring for a plant, 93% of the patients reported being happier and were judged by the nurses caring for them as more active and alert. In the same way, giving employees more autonomy will help them to thrive. They want to participate in making decisions that affect them. Autonomy gives them the control they need to shape their work environment in ways that allow them to perform at their best. People who have more autonomy at work are less stressed, more satisfied, more likely to stay, more motivated, and they perform better. Research shows that the most stressful jobs are those with high demands and low levels of control. Demanding jobs aren't as stressful if people have autonomy to decide how to meet the demands. It's the lack of control combined with high job demands that causes stress. In my own research, I surveyed over 600 women and found that autonomy was related to higher levels of satisfaction and organizational commitment and lower levels of intention of quitting. Another survey of over 800 business leaders in 2013 found that companies where employees had higher levels of autonomy were 10 times more likely to outperform more traditional companies in the short run, and 20 times more likely to outperform them in the long run. Despite the importance of autonomy for employee well-being and success, leaders are often reluctant to delegate. They fear what might happen if they let go and give up control. They hold tight to the belief if you want something done right, you've got to do it yourself. But as a leader, you don't have time to do everything yourself. You will only be successful if you learn to delegate. And that means trusting people to get the job done, even if they don't do it the way you would do it. When we discussed strengths, we saw that different people are likely to do the same job in different ways based on their unique combination of strengths. If you micromanage someone, expecting them to do something the way you did it, you're likely preventing them from using their strengths in a way that will let them be more successful. Empowering people to do things their own way leads to higher engagement and better performance. William McKnight was the president of the company 3M in the 1930s and 1940s. He believed in empowering his employees, saying, "Those men and women to whom we delegate authority and responsibility, if they are good people, are going to want to do their jobs in their own way." To this day, 3M is known for the amount of autonomy it provides employees. They're allowed to spend up to 15% of their time working on projects of their choosing. Many of the company's biggest innovations come from these projects, including Post-it notes. Now, I realize that delegating can be scary, but if it's done right, everybody wins. Good leaders recognize the benefits of empowering others. It helps them manage their own workload by giving them more discretionary time. It's the best way to develop the capabilities of their team members. Decision-making often improves when those on the front line who have the information are the ones making the decisions. Delegating demonstrates trust, and we've seen how important trust is for thriving at work. And as I've already mentioned, granting employees the autonomy they so desire reduces stress and increases commitment. There are right ways and wrong ways to delegate. Successful leaders follow these 3 rules. Clearly communicate goals and expectations, hold people accountable for results, and offer support. Successful delegation involves clarifying roles, goals, and expectations. Communication is absolutely vital. People need to understand their roles, and how their work contributes to the team's goals and ultimately the company's success. They need to know exactly what is expected of them. Now, this means that instead of spending time walking around to make sure everyone is at their desk looking busy, a leader should be spending time communicating with people in order to assure that everyone knows what direction the team is heading and what they're supposed to be doing to help get there. It's important to understand that autonomy is different from independence. It's not about working without supervision or rules. In fact, the more autonomy we grant employees, the more clearly defined the boundaries have to be. Employees need to know what they can and what they can't do. There should be established procedures and guidelines. Roles and responsibilities should be clarified. Within those boundaries, people can then be empowered to choose how they will accomplish the tasks they are assigned. The second rule is accountability. There can be no autonomy without accountability. Autonomy is about giving people increased control along with increased responsibility. Your focus as a leader moves from controlling when, where, and how people work to holding them accountable for results. This requires a cultural shift, away from traditional norms that value physical presence at the office to norms that value outcomes. What gets done is what matters. This is why setting expectations is so important. When we judge performance based on how many hours an employee spends in the office, performance expectations don't matter that much. The employee whose car is the first one in the parking lot in the morning and the last one there each night is the person who gets the promotion. But when performance is measured based on output rather than hours, people need to have a clear idea of what results they're expected to deliver and when. Some leaders don't trust that their employees are working if they don't actually see them working. But let's be honest. Employees can spend hours looking busy at work without really accomplishing much of anything. Attendance is not engagement. Presence is not the same thing as productivity. Research shows that people who work from home tend to work longer hours and are more productive. A call center gave half of their employees the opportunity to work from home for 9 months, while the other half remained in the office. The data collected at the end of the study showed that those who work from home were happier, less likely to quit, and more productive. They completed 13.5% more calls, which was equivalent to an extra day of work each week. Now, obviously, many jobs require that employees be physically present to perform them. But for these jobs, people can still be given some control over their schedules. Many studies have shown the positive impact of giving workers scheduling control. In a study of nurses, those who were allowed to participate in scheduling their own work had higher job satisfaction and organizational commitment and lower levels of burnout and intentions to quit. The Results-Only Work Environment, or ROE, is a management strategy that was co-created by Callie Ressler and Jody Thompson when they were at Best Buy. It's a pretty radical approach where employees are 100% autonomous and 100% accountable. They are evaluated on performance, not presence. Employees decide when, where, and how to work. The only thing that matters is that they meet their objectives. In a ROE environment, people aren't judged for coming in late, leaving early, or not showing up at all. Leaders communicate very clear goals and expectations, and employees are rewarded based on those outcomes. A study of more than 3,000 employees working at Best Buy when ROE was implemented found that they were happier, their productivity increased by an average of 35%, and turnover rates in some divisions were down by 90%. They also reported higher sleep quality, energy levels, physical health, and lower stress. Callie and Jody left Best Buy to start a consulting group called Culture RX. And Best Buy has a new CEO who chose not to continue ROE. But many other companies have implemented it, including retailers like Gap and Athleta, financial institutions, and insurance companies, among others. ROE may be a bit extreme, but it has shown the value of shifting organizational cultures away from an emphasis on face time to focus instead on results. A focus on results gives employees more control so that they can choose to work in ways that allow them to do their best work. The evidence is clear that employees who are free to make more choices regarding their work are happier, more productive, and more committed to their jobs. People perform at their best when leaders hold them accountable for results, but give them the freedom to decide when and where to work. In addition to communicating clear goals and holding people accountable for expected results, the third factor for successful delegation is support. Leaders need to provide people with the resources they need to succeed, ensuring that they have the equipment, materials, data, and time necessary for accomplishing their goals. Support also involves working to eliminate any obstacles that may hinder progress. Giving timely, constructive feedback also supports people, helping them to learn and improve. An especially powerful way that leaders can provide support is through coaching. Coaching helps people to move towards their goals by asking them questions. Questions can help employees gain insight by prompting them to think about their situation in new ways, or to recall past successes and consider how what they learned from them might be useful now. When offering support, be careful to avoid upward delegation. This happens when someone comes to you for help on a task and you end up telling them how to do it or doing it yourself. Remember that the key to coaching people is to ask questions. Great leaders don't give advice. They ask good questions. Good questions make people stop, think, and reflect. They help your employees figure out how to solve a problem on their own. If they're having trouble, you can offer to brainstorm alternative solutions with them, which can help them to uncover a preferred course of action. When you delegate, mistakes will inevitably be made, especially if people have spent their careers in a more controlling environment where they haven't had much autonomy. But each mistake is an opportunity to learn. Delegating is one of the best ways to give your employees the chance to foster a growth mindset. It's how talent is developed, by helping people learn and move forward. Great leaders make sure people have what they need to succeed, and then let them do their jobs. Jack Welch, the former head of GE, said it well. Communicate your ideas, distribute the resources, and get out of the way. I think team sports is a great example of how powerful autonomy can be. Our son played soccer when he was younger. It was really fun to watch the games when he was 5 or 6 years old, before the kids understood the different positions and what they were supposed to be doing. Every player on both of the teams would be running around the field chasing the ball. But as they grew older and had more practice, the coach taught them the rules of the game. They learned what their role was and where they were supposed to be on the field based on the position they played. After many hours of practice, they were able to hone their skills. That's when the games became really exciting. The players were so engaged. Each one did his part, giving his very best effort in order to win the game. Watching those games, I often thought how great it would be if people were that engaged at work. And they can be. Team members just need to know what the company is trying to do, have clear goals regarding what's expected of them, be given training, coaching, and the resources they need, and then be left alone to do everything they can to succeed. How much autonomy does your team have? Do they know what you expect from them? Do you trust your people enough to let them choose when, where, and how to work? Leaders who understand the importance of autonomy shift their focus from the more traditional roles of directing, controlling, and supervising toward more supportive roles, including acquiring resources, coordinating efforts, and coaching people for success. Employees who are given more autonomy have a greater sense of control at work. But in order for them to thrive, they also need to believe they are capable of successfully performing the tasks assigned to them. So as a leader, you also need to work on building people's sense of self-efficacy. When Stanford psychologist Albert Bandura introduced the idea of self-efficacy, he identified different factors that contribute to its development. These include mastery experiences, social modeling, and verbal persuasion. Leaders can take steps to influence these factors in order to foster the self-efficacy of their team members. Successful past performance gives us confidence through the experience of mastering something. If we did it before, we should be able to do it again. As a leader, you can boost employee self-efficacy by providing people with success experiences. Give your team members challenging but realistic assignments. Then provide them with the support they need to succeed. Make sure they have the necessary resources and coach them through difficulties. And when they're successful, acknowledge it. You may think that someone else's success should be self-evident to them, but external recognition of achievement can be a powerful confirmation. Social modeling builds our sense of self-efficacy by allowing us to observe others succeeding at a task. Its effect isn't as strong as actually performing the task oneself, but watching someone else lets you see that it's possible. If they can do it, surely you can too. A leader or a colleague can act as a role model, showing employees that a particular task can be successfully completed. As a leader, you can also use verbal persuasion to help foster the self-efficacy of your employees. Let them know that you're confident in their abilities to successfully perform the task. You may have heard of the Pygmalion effect. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy in which believing something to be true can make it true. The effect was named after the Greek myth of Pygmalion, a sculptor who fell in love with a statue he carved. He named her Galatea and treated her as if she were real. Eventually, she came to life. In a classic study, students in a California elementary school were given IQ tests. Teachers were then told that certain children were especially smart, although the children were actually chosen at random. The teachers ended up spending more time with the students they believed were smarter, giving them more challenging assignments, and expecting more of them. Consistent with the Pygmalion effect, the students who the teachers thought were smarter ended up with significantly higher test score gains compared to the other students. In the same way, letting employees know that you believe in them can positively impact their belief in themselves. With higher self-efficacy, they'll choose to engage in more difficult tasks and will persist longer, which will ultimately enhance their performance. It's hard to overstate the importance of autonomy for a thriving workplace. In a sense, I've saved the best for the last here. You can have a mindful workforce, well-rested, with plenty of opportunities for learning and forming meaningful relationships. But if those employees don't feel empowered to do their jobs and don't have a sense of control over their work lives, they won't thrive. We all have an innate need for personal control. You can leverage this instinct to bring out the best in your employees, and you should. As we come to the end of the course, I'd like to leave you with a few final thoughts. Great leaders know that their job is to help people be their best selves at work. And people are their best selves when they're thriving. In fact, being one's best self is the definition of thriving. As a leader, you have an incredible amount of influence over the well-being of your employees. You set the tone at work, positive or negative. You determine what behaviors will be rewarded. Your example will be followed. By taking this course, you've shown that you care about the well-being of your employees and are interested in knowing how to create a more positive workplace where they can thrive. You now have a better understanding of well-being and the factors that influence our ability to thrive. You have strategies that you can use to increase your own well-being so that you can be your best self as a leader. You've also learned strategies that you can implement to create conditions where your employees can do their best work. Now it's time to start applying what you've learned so that you can be a positive change maker. Change only happens when you take action. So start now. But don't try to do everything all at once. Start small. Small steps can lead to big change over time. Pick 2 or 3 of the actions you want to take today. Maybe you want to start with relationships. They are the most important factor for our personal well-being. What could you do to show your appreciation for your team? How could you foster a climate of psychological safety? What steps could you take to reduce incivility? Or would you like to focus first on learning and engagement? What could you do to foster a growth mindset among your team? How could you make sure that people have an opportunity to develop their strengths? What could be done to minimize distractions so that people are able to experience flow while working? Or perhaps fostering a more positive outlook is where you'd like to start. What could you do to keep yourself and those around you in a positive mood? Emotions spread rapidly from one person to another, and the emotions of a leader are especially contagious. So think about how you could use gratitude, positive framing, or positive priming to boost your positivity and that of your team. When something bad happens, discuss it in terms of specific and temporary causes so that people will remain optimistic. Brainstorm multiple pathways to achieve goals so that people remain hopeful. Maybe you're concerned that your employees lack a sense of meaning at work. They're so focused on getting their tasks done that they've forgotten why they're doing them. What could you do to remind them of the positive impact they're making? Could you help them to craft their jobs in a way that gives them a greater sense of purpose? Encouraging generosity and compassion at work can help people experience more meaning by having a positive impact on their colleagues. How could you reward people for collaborating? What could you do to serve as a role model for showing compassion at work? Many people today are struggling from a lack of resilience and poor physical health. Our fast-paced, always-on world prevents us from getting enough sleep. Too much work keeps us glued to our desks, so we don't move enough or take the breaks we need to recharge. All of the pressure we're under leads to chronic levels of stress that hurt our mental and physical health. Do your employees know that you care about their health and well-being? That you understand that in order to thrive, we all need time for rest and renewal? Do people feel obligated to respond to emails after hours? How could you encourage your employees to take breaks and vacations? What could you do to help them build resilience? Now, please don't let the number of possible strategies overwhelm you. I'm sure there are many things that you're already doing to positively impact the well-being of your employees. It's up to you to decide, given your particular workplace, which areas you want to address. In some workplaces, incivility is a real problem. In others, high levels of competition mean that generosity and compassion are lacking. Tailor your strategy to your unique workplace. Where do you believe taking the smallest action will make the biggest difference? Start there. Practicing mindfulness will help you throughout the change process. Being present means you'll be more likely to notice where change is most needed. It'll make it easier for you to assess the impact of your actions on others. Being mindful will help you to stay calm and focused. Change takes time. Be grateful when you see the progress you're making. Have self-compassion on the days that don't go so well. Know that you are not only helping your employees to be more successful at work, you're also helping them to have better lives.